Hello and welcome to yet another YouTube video here on this channel. Today I am talking about how you can build your own second brain featuring my note-taking app of choice, Heptabase. The first thing you have to do when you are picking a note or making a second brain is to pick a note-taking app, and there are so many note-taking apps out there. These days it seems like there is a new note-taking app every single day, and I have a lot of different videos on different note-taking apps on my YouTube channel, so please do check them out when you are doing research. So there are a couple of key questions you should ask yourself. How do you take notes and why do you take notes? That's the two most important questions. So in my case, how do I take notes? I take most of my notes in my bullet journal. I like to have the least amount of friction possible to get an idea or a thought down. It doesn't necessarily have to be actionable. I decide on that later, but I want to be able to store all of my ideas, all of my thoughts, all the things I have read and learned. I want to store them as soon as possible. So I use a bullet journal as well as Toos, which is an app I recommend to everyone actually. It's one of my favorite apps. Done a couple of videos on Toos as well, so please do check them out. But I like to take a lot of notes. I've always loved taking notes, and my notes does not necessarily have to be actionable. It's just a lot of different ideas and I can connect them together later. So you have to start off by thinking, how do you like to take your notes? Do you like to build a system and organize it exactly the way you want? Well, then something like Notion, Anytype, or Craft is for you. That's called the architect mindset when it comes to taking notes. If you're more like me, things like Obsidian, Logseq, Heptabase, there are a lot of different apps. Squirtle as well might be better suited for you. Do you like to have them visual as well? Then Heptabase, Squirtle, and Obsidian is probably three of the best apps out there for that. Walling is another choice if you're a more visual learner. If you just want to store your notes easily and you like folders and notebooks, then maybe Evernote, UpNote is something for you. Obsidian works there as well. Let me just say this. Obsidian is probably the best app out there for nerdy note takers like myself. The only reason I don't use Obsidian is because I tend to do more customization than actual work, which is a bad thing. So that's why I chose to go for something else. But Obsidian is really a great choice. I would recommend to a lot of people, especially if you are more of a nerdy PKM person. Then Obsidian is probably the best choice out there for you. But let's say you have chosen your note-taking app, you have done your research, you have to stick with that note-taking app for a while. I would recommend sticking with it for at least a year, and I am going to show you the reason why now. So I haven't moved all of my notes into Heptabase yet, and that's for one simple reason: this YouTube video. So as you can see, a lot of my notes are connected together, and in order to be able to connect different ideas, connect different thoughts, and the ability to get your knowledge to compound, you have to take a lot of notes. So every time I take a note, it can be connected to somewhere else. Every time I have a project, I probably have some notes or research I've done before that I can use in that project as well. So I've been taking notes now for 2 years, 2.5 years. So I have a lot of notes. I have over 1,000 notes. I think I have a few thousand notes inside of my note-taking app, but I haven't moved all of them into Heptabase yet. So as you can see, everything is connected, thoughts are connected together. I have backlinks as well for different ideas that might be connected together. It's just a lot easier when you have a lot of notes to let your knowledge compound, and that's when you get something out of your second brain. If you only have a few notes, you probably aren't getting any use of your second brain. So stick with a note-taking app at least for 1 year. It might be tempting to switch to another app because it has a feature that you think would fix all of your organizational problems, but most apps today can do most of the work. Don't switch for one or two features. Stick with your note-taking app. Let your knowledge compound. And most of the note-taking app, as I said, are able to handle your note-taking needs. So I chose Heptabase simply because it fits my thinking. I used to use Notion. I have tried a bunch of other note-taking apps before I decided to go for Heptabase, and I'm combining it with Tooz and my bullet journal. I use a bullet journal or a commonplace book. I use my bullet journal as a commonplace book because I take better notes when I'm writing with my hand instead of writing on the computer, and then I migrate a lot of my notes later depending on whether or not they are actionable. So in my second brain, I only have things that are actionable, things I'm actually using or have used before for a video or a project. But that's the other thing I wanted to touch on. You have to let your knowledge come, or your notes come organically. Don't just go in and write a bunch of notes because you're excited. Every time you have a project, every time you have an idea, every time you have something to write it down. Don't force yourself to write things down because you will end up with a lot of notes that you will probably never use. I did that when I first started. I just took a bunch of notes on things I wasn't interested in at all, and it ended up cluttering all of my note-taking space. The next thing I want to touch on is that you have to review your notes regularly. It is so important to spend time reviewing your notes, and I will show you why right now. So this is a note I haven't reviewed yet. And when I open it, you can see that there are just a bunch of stuff that doesn't make sense. I like to think of my notes as a message to my future self. Every note I have is a message to my future self, because in a year, in 2 years, I will probably not remember why I took this note and why it resonated with me. So I like to think of it as a message for my future self. That's why I spend a little bit of time every single Sunday. So I spend around 30 minutes, half an hour to an hour to go through my notes while I'm doing my weekly review. So I will go through my bullet journal, go through my Tooz app, and just migrate things, highlight things, review the notes I've taken this week. And it seems like it is a lot of work, but it actually isn't. It only takes me half an hour to an hour, and it saves me so much time when I'm actually working and actually doing my job and doing my research. It is so much easier when I've done the organizational work up front. It just makes my life a lot easier, and I would say that the half an hour to an hour investment is definitely worth it every single week. So spend time reviewing, highlighting, and distilling your notes so you can easily find the right things, the things you're looking for when you are going through your notes app. It doesn't have to be Heptabase, it can be anything else, but the most important thing is to actually review and organize your notes once a week. The last thing I want to touch on is that no note-taking app is perfect. You will never find the perfect organizational structure. You will never find the perfect note-taking app, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough. If you do too much, then it will be too hard to maintain, and you will end up not continuing taking notes. So I like to say that I need the least amount of organization possible in my note-taking app. That's my rule. Least amount of organization possible. First, let chaos reign, then reign in chaos. That's the saying. So that's my mentality when I use my note-taking app, because I don't want to spend too much time actually maintaining my system. So that's an easy overview on how you can build a second brain. If you have any questions, anything you want me to touch on or make a video on, please do comment down below. I'm happy to hear all of your suggestions, and I hope to see you again quite soon.